And then the huge peaceful wilderness of outer London, the barges on the miry river, the familiar streets, the posters telling of a cricket match and royal weddings, the men in bowler hats, the pigeons in Trafalgar Square, the red buses, the blue policemen, all sleeping the deep, deep sleep of England, from which I sometimes fear that we shall never wake until we are jerked out of it by the roar of bombs. Probably he was able to come up with such an evocation because he was in Morocco, and he was thinking about all the things essential to Britain for him, and sort of listed them there. Now, I don't know why Larkin wrote in 1972 a poem called Going Gone. It actually even rhymes. And that will be England, gone. The shadows, the meadows, the lanes, the guild halls, the carved choirs. There'll be books, it will linger on in galleries, but all that remains for us will be concrete and tires. Just cement and car tires is all that'll be left of England. Okay, so back to page 183, or back to chapter 8. Now we're on page 183, skipping to the next quote. Now, you probably know that Orwell was a police officer in, I believe it was Burma, in the early days of his life, when he was young. And so he had a capacity for vicarious identification with the boss and the bossed. In other words, he saw the underdog, and he also, as it says, vicarious identification, he also identified through the boss sometimes. He knows what it's like to be in charge. He said to one of his friends something about these people have to be whipped. They're not normal. There's no way to get through to them. Alright, now he's talking just a bunch of nonsense, but out of the middle of there comes a little sound blip, if you will, for environmentalism of some kind. He says, an attachment to nature, which is everywhere facing assault and desecration. It's the only thing worth having, and we don't want it. Nature. It's the only thing worth having, and we don't want it. He says it's everywhere facing assault and desecration. Now, let's change those two words, assault and desecration, to worship and exaltation, and then we'll have a really true picture of what's going on in the world today, won't we? An attachment to nature, which is everywhere facing worship and exaltation. It's the only thing we don't need, and everyone's trying to get it. There, that's a better reworking and a true reworking of the sentence. Nature's what we don't need. I was out doing a video on some damn trees on, let's see, what's that video going to be about? Forget what it was about. About Thunderfoot, I believe, and bugs and stuff. An ant fell on me. Big stupid looking ant. Big red stupid thing. Nature. What the hell's that good for? That's what we don't need, is a bunch of... You go out and sit in the grass and there's ticks on you and you say, oh, I love nature. That's stupid. Nature is not to be worshipped. Now, we skip down a ways. It mentions that in Animal Farm, the persons of Lenin and Trotsky are combined into one. Or it might be truer to say that there is no Lenin pig at all. The guy's just Trotsky. Such a stupendous omission, says Hitchens, cannot have been accidental, especially since it recurs in 1984, where there is only Big Brother on the one hand and Emmanuel Goldstein on the other. Orwell in his essay was fond of saying that both Lenin and Trotsky bore some responsibility for Stalinism, but let's stop there, we don't need to go further. The point there is that there will always be two villains in reality. There's very, very rarely more than one hero. Take that, put it on a bumper sticker or something, put it in your wallet, a little note card, and read that. There will be two villains and one hero. It's like a prophetic prophecy or whatever. I prophesy. No, that's a historical fact. There are always two villains ready to jump in and take advantage. But if there is anybody of integrity, he must stand alone. There will be no one by his side. That is history. That's why you have Lenin and Trotsky fighting each other for power over the scraps. That's why you end up with Soviet Russia, Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan. Fighting who? America. Yeah, I know the Brits did a good job in the battle over Britain in the skies. Okay, we go down to page 187. The aims and principles of the Russian Revolution are given face value credit throughout Orwell's writings. This is a revolution betrayed, not a revolution that is monstrous from its inception. Okay, wrong. It is not a revolution betrayed. It was a revolution monstrous from its inception. What they wanted to do was take all the material wealth in society, as if it were just apples on a tree, and then hand it out to people. That means robbery. That was the basis of their whole agenda, was to rob people and redistribute wealth to the mob and give themselves absolute power and bring about some sort of perfect society. It was evil from its inception. And you see again the failure of Hitchens to penetrate his cloud of Marxism. He was a Marxist for so long and he just had to give it up. It fell away from him, as he said. He found he could no longer call himself a Marxist. I mean, my God, stubborn man, it ought to disown this stuff. Okay, we skip down, page 188. Hitchens says, 1984 is more like rage than anger. Okay, so it's not just angry at communism and stuff. It's absolutely in a rage, in a fury. Rage against the dying of the light. Now that's a poem by somebody. I don't know who, but it's a fair poem. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. He writes this poem to his dad while he's dying, this poet. Anyways, that's what 1984 is like. But because of people like Orwell, we've got today in the world, bad as the situation may be in some ways, we've got the communist government of China implementing free trade policies because they know it works. It works. That's so well known that government control doesn't work and the organic system of the economy does. That's so well known that even the communists use free trade. It's bizarre. Because of people like Orwell, we're in a better situation now. So the dying of the light that he raged against blew the candle, inflamed the fire, was like a bellows blowing air on the fire. Can I do that? There's a novel called Tristan Shandy, T-R-I-S-T, Tristam Shandy. And he just mentions it here because there's apparently some little teeny thing in there where there's juggling with numbers of 2 + 2 = 5 type of juggling with numbers. He mentions in Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground there's some sort of juggling of numbers that's equivalent to the 2 + 2 = 5 thing. Now Tristram Shandy says nothing else about, but I want to mention, just since it's here, that it was Thomas Jefferson's favorite novel. I don't know if Hitchens knows that or not. We skip to the next page. Spooky quote this. There is the possibility, quote, that it is the prisoners themselves who help to bar the doors. The will to command and dominate is one thing, but the will to obey and be prostrate is a deadly foe as well. Very true. Now, I pose the question, while we're on the subject. Assume we've got a very fairly healthy society. I shouldn't say very. Fairly healthy society. And there's somebody that wants to get absolute power. They want to take over. What do? They have to have people submit to them. Now, as Ayn Rand said, people will, these evil people are all around. The Hitlers, Stalins, they're out there. They can smell it, the chance. They smell it. They crawl from under rocks. So there's no problem coming up with those people. The problem is getting people to bow down to begin with. Once people bow down, and they do this without any master over them, they do this for ideological purposes. Once people begin to bow down, in this large metaphorical sense, then the leash will be brought. Then the leader will crawl out from under the rock. But the people must first prostrate themselves. That's what I say. He says that the will to obey and prostrate's a deadly foe as well. But these bloodthirsty thugs would never have the first breath of a chance if people weren't ready.